My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life, people in my hometown believed my family was respectable. The Carters had lived in Maple Ridge, Pennsylvania, for as long as anyone could remember. It was the kind of town where people still waved from their front porches, where the same diner had been serving meatloaf every Thursday for 30 years, and where everyone knew everyone else's business, whether they admitted it or not. My father, Richard Carter, had spent 2 decades as a plant supervisor at the local steel factory before it shut down. My mother, Linda, volunteered at church every Sunday and organized charity drives every winter. To the outside world, they looked like the kind of parents people trusted. Responsible, traditional, protective. But behind our front door, things worked a little differently. Rules were everywhere in our house. Some of them were spoken. Most of them were not. I didn't get my own house key until I was 21. If I drove more than 15 miles away, my parents expected a phone call first. And when I started working part-time at the Maple Ridge Diner during high school, every paycheck went directly into a joint bank account my mother had opened for safekeeping. I never saw the statements. I never questioned it, because when you grow up in a house like that, you learn very early that questioning things only makes life harder. School was the one place where I felt like I could breathe. I studied constantly, stayed late for tutoring, volunteered for every academic club they offered. By the time I graduated high school, I was ranked near the top of my class. My guidance counselor pulled me aside one afternoon and said something I'll never forget. "Emily, you could get real scholarships, good ones. You should apply to colleges." For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to imagine leaving Maple Ridge. New places, new people, a life that belonged to me. I brought the brochures home that evening. I still remember how the paper felt in my hands as I set them on the kitchen counter. My father didn't even open them. He glanced down once, then pushed them aside like they were junk mail. "College is for people who don't know how to work," he said calmly. "You already have a roof, food, and family. That's more than most people get." My mother didn't say a word, and that was the end of that conversation, so I stayed. I worked at the diner. I helped my mother in the garden. I cleaned the house, cooked dinners, and listened to my father explain how dangerous the outside world had become. Years passed that way, quietly, predictably, until the week after my 26th birthday. Nothing dramatic happened that day. No fight, no argument. I was standing in the kitchen, scrubbing the same cast iron skillet I had been scrubbing since I was a teenager. The late afternoon sunlight was coming through the window above the sink, and suddenly a thought hit me so hard. It felt like someone had slammed a door inside my head. If I don't leave now, I will still be standing here at 40. Same sink, same kitchen, same life. That thought scared me more than anything my father had ever said. The next morning, I walked to the Maple Ridge Public Library. It was a small building tucked behind the town hall, with creaky floors and computers that were older than some of the books on the shelves. I sat down at one of the back computers, and I created a new email address. Not the family one my parents could access. A new one, just mine. My hands were shaking a little when I started searching job listings. Eventually I found one. A hardware store in Brookfield, about 20 miles away, was hiring a full-time sales associate, 9 to 5. Benefits after 3 months. It didn't sound glamorous, but to me, it sounded like freedom. I typed out my application slowly, using 2 fingers on the keyboard. Then I stared at the screen for a long moment, because once I pressed that button, things would start changing. Finally, I took a breath, and I clicked send. 2 days later, an email arrived. They wanted to interview me, Thursday morning, 10 o'clock. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. But what I didn't know yet was that someone else already knew about that interview, and they had no intention of letting it happen. Thursday morning arrived colder than usual. The sky over Maple Ridge was gray, the kind of pale winter gray that makes everything feel quieter than normal. I remember sitting in my car outside the hardware store in Brookfield, staring at the front doors and trying to steady my breathing. This was it, my first real step away from home. The manager greeted me at the door with a warm handshake. His name was Mr. Talbot, a man in his late 50s with a calm voice and silver hair. At first, the interview felt normal. He asked about my experience working at the diner. He asked about my availability. We even laughed once when he told me how half the customers came in just to argue about tools they didn't actually need. For a few minutes, I allowed myself to believe everything was going to work out. Then Mr. Talbot leaned back in his chair. His expression changed. Not angry, just careful. He folded his hands on the desk and said quietly, "Emily, before we go any further, I need to ask you something." My stomach tightened. "Of course." He hesitated for a moment. "Is there anything in your background, something legal, that you'd like to explain?" The question felt like it had come out of nowhere. I blinked. "No, sir, nothing like that." Mr. Talbot looked down at the paper on his desk, then back at me. "We received a phone call yesterday afternoon," he said slowly. "A woman who said she was concerned about hiring you." The room suddenly felt smaller. "What did she say?" He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "She claimed you had been involved in a theft case. Said there might even be a felony charge." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. "A felony." I laughed nervously. "That's not possible. I've never even been arrested." Mr. Talbot studied my face for a long time. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to believe me, but he also had a business to run. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "We just can't take that risk." The interview ended 5 minutes later. I walked out of the store in silence. The drive back to Maple Ridge felt longer than it had that morning. The radio stayed off. The road stretched out ahead of me in long, empty lines. When I pulled into our driveway, my father was sitting on the porch, just like always, newspaper open, coffee mug beside him. He didn't even look up when I stepped out of the car. "How was your day?" he asked casually. I stood there for a moment, keys still in my hand. "Fine," I said. "Good," he replied. Then he turned the page of his newspaper. Dinner that night was quiet. My mother talked about a neighbor's new fence. My father nodded occasionally while cutting his pot roast into careful pieces. No one mentioned Brookfield, but sometime during that meal, a small, uncomfortable thought began forming in the back of my mind. The kind of thought you don't want to believe. Did they know? I tried to ignore it, but over the next 6 weeks, something strange kept happening. I applied for 3 more jobs. A grocery store in Ridgewood, a warehouse outside Franklin County, in a breakfast diner 2 towns over. Each place called me for an interview, and each interview ended the same way. Polite smiles, careful questions, and then a quiet conversation about concerns regarding my background. By the 4th rejection, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Someone was contacting these employers. Someone was telling them I had a criminal record. One evening, after my parents had gone to bed, I walked quietly down the hallway toward my mother's sewing room. It was the only room in the house that truly belonged to her. She kept fabric thread and old notebooks stacked neatly on the desk. I opened the top drawer. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Then I noticed a small blue notebook tucked beneath a pile of cloth. I opened it, and my heart stopped. On the left side of the page were names of businesses: Brookfield Hardware, Ridgewood Market, Franklin Logistics, Sunrise Diner. Every place I had applied to, next to each name, was a red check mark. And beside several of them were small handwritten notes. Called Tuesday afternoon. Spoke to hiring manager. Handled. I stood there in the dim light of the sewing room, staring at those pages. The realization hit slowly, heavy, cold. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't bad luck. Someone had been tracking my job applications. Someone had been calling those businesses, one by one. And judging by the handwriting in that notebook, that someone was my mother. I closed the notebook carefully, put it back exactly where I found it. Then I walked back to my room and sat on the edge of my bed. For a long time, I stared at the wall. One question kept repeating in my mind, over and over. What kind of parents would rather destroy their daughter's future than let her live her own life? The next morning, I decided I was going to find out, and that decision would change everything. The next morning, I placed the blue notebook in the middle of the kitchen table. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. My mother stood at the counter pouring coffee. My father sat in his usual chair, buttering a slice of toast. Everything looked completely normal. That was the strange part. "Mom," I said quietly, "can you explain this?" She turned. For a moment, she just stared at the notebook. The coffee pot froze, halfway above the mug in her hand. Then the tears came. Not slowly, not naturally. They arrived all at once. "You went through my things," she whispered, her voice trembling. My father looked up from his plate. "What's going on?" I opened the notebook and turned it toward them. "These are all the places I applied for jobs," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I expected. "You called them. You told them I had a criminal record." My mother pressed her hand against her chest like she was in pain. "I did it because I love you." The words hung in the air for a moment. "I did it to protect you," she continued, her voice shaking. "You have no idea how dangerous the world is." "I'm 26, I said. "You're still my daughter," she replied quickly. My father set his fork down with slow, deliberate movements. "Emily," he said calmly, "you think you're ready to live on your own." I didn't answer, because I already knew the truth. This wasn't about safety. It was about control. "I'm leaving," I said. My father smiled, not warmly, just slightly. "You walk out of this house," he said quietly. "You walk out with nothing." I thought he was bluffing. I really did. That night, I packed a small backpack, 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my phone charger, and an old photograph of my grandfather that I kept in my nightstand. When I walked toward the front door, my parents were waiting in the hallway. My mother's arms were crossed. My father leaned against the wall behind her. "If you leave," my mother said, her voice suddenly cold, "don't come back." I opened the door. The October air outside was sharp and quiet. Just before stepping off the porch, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen loaded slowly. Then the number appeared. Balance $0. Every paycheck I had earned for years. Gone. My mother had been listed on the account since I was a teenager. She didn't need my permission to withdraw the money. "I need my birth certificate," I said, "and my social security card." My father stepped forward and closed the screen door behind me. "Those belong to this house," he said. And just like that, I was outside. I walked down the driveway. At exactly 9:38 p.m., I had $12 in my pocket. My phone battery was at 15%, and I had nowhere to go. The gas station on Route 19 was the only place still open. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the parking lot. Inside, a cashier wiped the counter without looking up as I stepped through the door. I sat outside on the curb for hours. Cars came and went. A truck driver bought coffee. Someone filled their tank. No one paid much attention to the girl sitting under the bright white lights. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text message from my father. "Come home. Apologize. And maybe I'll stop." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned my phone off. Partly because I was angry, mostly because the battery was about to die. 2 days later, a woman at that same gas station slipped a folded napkin across the counter. "There's a shelter on Mill Street," she said quietly. "They help people get back on their feet." That's how I found the Maple Ridge Community Shelter. It was a converted warehouse with 20 beds, 1 shared kitchen, and fluorescent lights that hummed all night long. I was the youngest person there by almost 20 years. Most of the residents had been through things far worse than me, but for the first time since leaving home, I had a place to sleep. The next few months were a blur of paperwork and waiting, replacing my birth certificate, trying to get a temporary ID, applying for jobs farther away. 30 miles, sometimes 40, places my parents had never heard of. I thought distance would solve the problem. I was wrong, because somehow every employer still seemed to know the same lie. And the calls weren't just phone calls anymore. Someone had started sending emails with attachments that looked exactly like official police reports. That's when I understood something terrifying. My parents weren't just trying to stop me from leaving. They were trying to make sure no one would ever hire me again. But what I didn't know yet was that someone else had been watching everything, and very soon, they were going to step out of the shadows. The first time I heard about him, I almost ignored it. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon at the shelter. Most of the residents had already left for the day center, and I was helping Linda, the woman who ran the shelter, restock the pantry shelves. Linda had worked there for more than 10 years. She had a calm way of speaking, the kind of voice that made people feel safe without trying too hard. As I stacked canned soup onto a shelf, she leaned against the doorway and said casually, "Emily, someone came looking for you last week." I stopped. For me, she nodded. A man, mid-60s I'd say, gray hair, very polite. My first thought was immediate. My father. My stomach tightened. What did he want? Linda reached into the pocket of her sweater and pulled out a small white card. He said he was a private investigator. She handed the card to me. The name printed on it read, Daniel Brooks, licensed private investigator. Underneath was a phone number. That doesn't make any sense, I said quietly. He didn't seem like trouble, Linda replied. He actually looked worried. I turned the card over in my fingers. Private investigator. The words alone made my chest tighten. My father had spent years working as a plant manager. He knew people. He knew how to manipulate situations. Hiring someone to track me down wouldn't be impossible. What exactly did he say? I asked. Linda thought for a moment. He asked if you were safe, she said. Then he left the card and told me to give it to you. If you ever wanted to call. I slipped the card into my pocket, but I didn't call. Not that day. Not the next day either. After everything that had happened, trust didn't come easily anymore. Days passed, then weeks. Life at the shelter settled into a strange routine. In the mornings, I helped clean the kitchen. In the afternoons, I walked to the library to apply for jobs online. Most applications still ended the same way. Polite rejection, careful hesitation. Someone somewhere always seemed to know about the imaginary criminal record attached to my name. And then one evening, everything nearly collapsed. Linda called me into her office. Her door was usually open. That night, it was closed. She sat behind her desk with a serious expression. I received a phone call today, she said. My stomach dropped immediately. From who? A woman who said she was a county social worker. Cold spread through my chest. What did she say? Linda folded her hands together. She claimed you had a history of violent behavior. Said you might pose a risk to other residents. I stared at her. My voice barely came out. That was my mother. Linda nodded slowly. I suspected as much. The fluorescent light above us buzzed softly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Linda leaned forward. I want you to know something, she said quietly. I don't believe her. Relief washed over me so suddenly it almost made me dizzy. But she continued gently. If she contacts the county office and files an official complaint, the decision might be taken out of my hands. I understood what she meant. Even the shelter might not be safe for much longer. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling for hours. Everything felt trapped. Every job opportunity destroyed. Every safe place threatened. It was like my parents had turned the entire world into a cage. And then I remembered the card. Daniel Brooks, private investigator. I reached into the pocket of my jacket and pulled it out. The edges were slightly worn from being carried around. For a long time, I just stared at the number. Finally, around 9 o'clock, I dialed. The phone rang twice. A calm voice answered. Daniel Brooks. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I said quietly, "My name is Emily Carter." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "I've been hoping you would call." We agreed to meet the next morning, 8 o'clock, at a small cafe 2 blocks from the shelter. I barely slept that night. Part of me was convinced it was a trap, but another part of me, the part that still believed life could change, felt something else. Hope. The next morning, the cafe was nearly empty. An older man sat alone at a table near the window. Gray hair, navy jacket, a worn leather briefcase resting beside his chair. When I approached, he stood politely. "Emily." I nodded. He placed the briefcase carefully on the table between us. Then he said something I never expected to hear. Your grandfather hired me. For a moment, the entire world seemed to go quiet. My grandfather, I whispered. He nodded slowly. 10 years ago. Then he turned the brass clasp on the briefcase and opened it. What I saw inside was the beginning of everything changing.